Yeah.
So you practiced a lot for the interview as well, right? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, a lot. It was a lot of practice.
Yeah, I knew that you were practicing with a friend of yours, but like 1 month just for this,
Yeah.
that's
I
amazing.
mean, just for this, it was a lot of work. So with him, I believe I did around 30. So I had actually two friends that I was mocking interviews, and I did around 30 mock interviews before my first interview.
Oh,
And so like each mock interview was around 1 hour. So this is already around 30 hours of work on this, plus the time that I
wow.
put on tasks by myself that they were not there, which probably were way more than this 30 hours.
Yeah.
So it was a month that nothing else existed.
Yeah, so what would be your advice to someone who wants to get an internship? I know it would be along the lines of practice, 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 but
Yeah.
what is like maybe if you had to give one or two suggestions, what would be the main things to consider?
Okay. So first thing would be step backwards, and you need an interview. And in order to get an interview, there are different ways. So if you like competitive programming, go ahead and do it and take it seriously and practice a lot. I believe like on my internship there, on my intern class, we were 26, and I believe at least half of the interns came from competitive programming backgrounds, or they have some familiarity with the process. So
Yeah,
doing coding competitions and getting good results is something that you can include in your resume and can get you an interview. So this is one way. The other way that you can do is go ahead and build things. Go ahead and do internships in other places. Do internships in different startups or different companies that are not exactly tech companies, but you get the experience to become a better engineer. And then those things you can afterwards include on your resume, and they will very likely help you to get an interview. Then in either case, after you get an interview, prepare. Don't assume that you are already prepared. Don't assume that you already know the things. Take it seriously. Go well prepared there. Do several questions as practicing exercises. Try to mock something with your friend, and go to that interview knowing what you can do and being
yeah,
confident that you can solve the test that they are going to give you. Because yeah, I believe even if you are already familiar with this kind of problem and you lack some practice over the last, I don't know, the last few months, you haven't been doing this sort of problems a lot. But if you reach the interview with a confidence level higher that you can, then
yeah,
you won't be impressed when at the first moment you don't know the answer to the question, because it will happen.
definitely.
Someone will state you a problem that you don't know the answer by heart usually, and then you have to come up with the solution, and you need this confidence to figure out that you can come up with that solution, and this confidence comes from practicing beforehand, before the interview.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's like a very detailed advice on uh, how to crack an interview at Facebook. But okay, so we left our conversation about the interview in between. So let's continue about it. So yeah, you were talking about the first interview. Let's first finish the process that you were talking about the first interview, and then we'll move on to the second interview. So
Okay.
yeah, let's.
Awesome. So, well, where I left off was, okay, you go ahead and you code your solution, but then the interview is not over. The next thing that sometimes then this ending it changes, but oftentimes your interviewer you will ask you, okay, do you have bugs on your code? And the actual way of doing that is, okay, let's run an example through the code. And when you're running the example, be very careful to not do what you think the code should be doing. Be careful to do exactly what the code is doing. So go line by line and do actually what that line is saying that it's doing. Don't think, okay, this line I should be multiplying a number by 3. but in the line is still there. But what you believe it should be doing, you would be multiplying by 3, and that's the algorithm that you're running. So be careful and be used to running your algorithms by hand, at least a few steps to figure out, okay, am I doing the right task? Am I solving the right
Yeah.
problem? Can I spot bugs on what I did? So this is one way that the interview can go. Then the second thing usually is around this time, the interviewer will ask you what is the complexity of your solution. And then you, in the beginning, when you stated your solution, you described what you were doing,
Hmm.
and there was one complexity on what you described. Maybe what you coded was something different from what you described. And so at this point, it's really important to look at the code, read the code, and figure out the complexity of the actual code that you wrote. And
Uh,
if it's actually the same thing on the solution that you envisioned in the beginning. Sometimes
yeah.
they change. Sometimes you find improvements on the solution. Sometimes you implemented something worse. It happens.
Yeah.
Okay. And then other then this is a minor thing. I don't believe that this appears very often, but you should be kind of prepared. It would be something like, okay, can you think about some edge cases that your solution has? Some cases, what would be the test cases that you would write in order to make sure that your solution is correct? And then
Uh,
these cases usually involve, okay, what are the base cases? So I'm processing an array. So, okay, what are the basic cases? So I can try an empty array. I can try an array with one element. I can try an array with several elements. Probably you will have different behaviors on each situation. Maybe the way that you are handling an empty array is different than the way that you are handling a normal array. For example, let's say that what you are coding is a function that sums all the elements of the array. You should handle properly an empty array. What are you going to do? Are you going to throw an error? Are you going to return 0 because the sum of no elements is 0? What are you going to do? And you should make sure that you are handling properly these edge cases on this kind of situation. And yeah, and then the final part of the interview will end up all of a sudden. It will be
oh.
usually the interviewers, they have a really strict time, at least for these phone interviews. And if it's 45 minutes, when 45 minutes are done, it will be, okay, I gotta go, bye. And that will
Really?
be it. Yes, that will be it. Don't get nervous, don't get anxious about it. That's just the way it is. They are busy. The meeting rooms that they are using to interview people are really busy, and they really have to leave. So it's nothing
Yeah. Yeah.
personal against you. It's just the system.
Okay. That's funny in a way. Like the time is up. Okay. Thank you for the interview. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but that's the first interview, right? So, how technical is the second interview? Is it more difficult or is it a bit easier?
yeah. So okay, so what I just described was the overall process of the interview. So the first interview, both interviews are very technical.
Okay.
They don't have anything of behavioral interviews. Actually, the second interview has a little bit of behavior interview, and then sometimes you have some time in the end to ask them questions. Please ask meaningful questions. So ask
Yeah.
cool things. Don't like they are really good engineers probably talking to you, and they are giving you the chance of asking anything that you want in the company that you would like to work. Go ahead with something
Yeah.
cool to ask them. They will also remember if you ask them something cool. So this is
What
one
would
thing.
be a good question to ask? Uh, an example.
Good question to ask. Okay, one good thing could be, okay, what was your worst day on your workplace? So I can imagine that you have really awesome work days recently, but what was the worst one that you felt, oh, that was so bad. Something really bad happened and I hate it. And then they might tell you something cool, or it might happen that they have never had a worst day. It was always sunshine and rain. So they might happen that they will tell you that, oh, okay, actually there was this day that something interesting happened, and then you'll be able to have a sample of information that you wouldn't have otherwise.
So, so essentially, it doesn't have to be related to work. You can be uh, as general about work experience at Facebook or anything related to anything that comes to your mind, basically. But better to ask, right?
I mean, it should be something related to the company, I believe. So
Yeah,
you
I
should
mean,
have,
of course, it would be
yeah,
related to the company, but it doesn't have to be related to uh, directly related to the kind of work that they are doing, but it can be general. It can be related to general work culture and all those things as well, right?
Can be. You can as well ask which kind of project is this person working on, what this person
Yeah.
likes about this project. And if you are able to come up with unique questions, then it's cool. It's nice as well. If you ask them something they are not expecting, you actually have the chance of surprising your interviewer, which, and maybe sometimes the interviewer was supposed to be the other way around, with them surprising you of something.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's cool. Okay, so then we go ahead and we go, how were my actual interviews?
Hmm.
Then the first interview was straightforward. I had a coding question and I had a really hard time coming to the optimal solution. So I stated the brute force, and then the famous question came, "Can you do better than that?" And I was, not sure. And the interviewer tried to help me along the way. I tried to figure out the solution. In the end, we somehow got together to the optimal solution, and then he said, "Okay, you can start coding it." And then I implemented it, and I could see in my implementation actually a mistake, a bug, and I was, oh man, it's over to me. I mean, I see there's a bug there, and
Hmm.
it won't work. And then the interviewer asked me, okay, could you run your code through a test case, through some example? And then there were a couple of examples. Luckily, I chose one example that my solution worked, and I applied my solution on that example, and he said, yeah, okay, looks fine, looks good to me. The time is over. See you. And then for for the next hours, I was thinking, okay, I'm pretty sure I totally failed. I'm very confident. At least I had a chance. It was cool to see how it is, but I failed. And then 2 days later came some message from the recruiter, and she told me, "Hey, Julio, we would like to book your second interview." I was, yes, I can't believe it. I have a next interview. Okay, let's keep studying then. And then I had other 2 weeks to prepare for the second interview. And then, okay, second interview came. And then the first 10, 15 minutes were more behavioral questions. So he actually asked me a little bit about my previous experiences and the things that I have worked on before. And then we moved to the coding question. And this interview was awesome. So the first coding question, I stated the brute force, I stated the optimal solution, I coded, I stated the complexity. It was everything good. And then the interviewer said, okay, let's go ahead and move to the second question. And then he gave me the second question. I stated the brute force. I stated the optimal solution. I coded the optimal solution. I gave the complexity analysis of that solution. I run through a small test case. And then he was like, okay, now that we are done with that, let's go back to the first question. And then he did an adjustment of the question that make it slightly more complex. So I would have to adjust my algorithm there as well. And then I went ahead, I adjusted my algorithm to that. I only spoke that because time was running out. I wouldn't have enough time to code
Yeah.
this other solution. So I stated what I would do, and and he said, yeah, okay, what would be the time complexity of this? And I had a hard time figuring out the time complexity of this modified solution. I actually did a mistake there. And he said, yeah, actually, that's not the time complexity. There's a small mistake there. You should replace this term for this term. But it's not a big issue. It's okay. But my time is over. I got to go. And
Yeah, the endings are always funny, right?
yeah. And then afterwards, it was the next week. I probably this is not the it's not the best way of dealing with this. So I got really anxious about it. And if you get really anxious about it afterwards, it's totally normal. It's part of the process. It's part of
Yeah.
this game. So, and the anxiety that I got was translated in the fact that I was refreshing my email to check if there was some response from the recruiter literally every 5 minutes
Yeah.
for until I received the final answer. And I did the second interview on Tuesday, and on Monday of the next week, I was going to have lunch. And before putting my food on the microwave, I refreshed my email, nothing there. And then I put my food in the microwave, turn it on, refresh my email again, and boom, there was a message there. Oh, okay.
So that must
Yes,
be
come.
an amazing moment, right?
Yeah. And then in the end, they told me that I had got an offer, and then we should schedule a call to talk about next steps.
Okay. So they gave you a confirmation that you have received an offer now, finally.
Yeah, yeah. So on this email, they what actually they tell you is like, well, we would like to send you an offer. It would be cool to set some time so that we could speak. And then this
Okay.
is already okay. It's coming, and then you speak, and the actual offer comes.
Yeah, so that must be a really satisfying moment because you worked really, really hard at it as well, right? So all the hard work paid off, and that must be a really good feeling when you got the mail. And
Yeah.
by the way, just the lesson from this the entire story is just keep refreshing your mails. That's the only lesson.
Yes. All the rest is not important at all.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it must have been really amazing, right?
Yeah, it was really cool. I was really happy. I'm still really happy that it happened. And it
Yeah.
was
So, how long after you received the offer did you actually join Facebook as an intern?
okay. So usually the recruiting process it happens for the following year. So I
Okay.
did the interviews around May, June, and I started in January of next year.
Oh,
So it took 6 months around
mhm.
this to actually start internship.
Yeah. And so that also means that the excitement phase, kind of settled for a while, and then maybe it started again, at the end of December.
Yeah, I mean it changes. So after you receive it, it's gonna be whoa, it's coming,
Yeah.
and then so much time passes, and you think, yeah, okay, I mean it's coming, it will come at some point, but then some steps from your relocating process start to happen, and then you start to get pumped and excited again because it's actually happening, and when the moment, at least for me, when the moment happened and I was actually there, I got to the city that I was going to do my internship. I was, yes, it's happening. It's awesome. I can't wait to start the internship tomorrow. And I was thinking that on Sunday evening. I just wanted Monday to come.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about your internship experience there. So you got an internship at Facebook in London, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how the experience of working at Facebook was for you.
Okay. Well, if one thing can be taken away from this is that things there move fast, and it's really impressive. I
Okay.
mean, it's one of their values, move fast.
Oh.
And actually, it was before move fast and break things. This break things part is changing a little bit now. So, but the move fast is still really in their blood, and it's really impressive how 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 things happen and how things evolve. So what happened there for me when I saw, so I started, I met my manager. He gave me an overview of what was going to be my project, and I was looking at it, and the only thing that I could thought was I will never be able to finish this. Look at this. There are so many features. There are so many things to do. I won't be able to finish this. Man, I just have three
Yeah.
months. What is going on here? And overall, after things start, it's boom, boom. All of a sudden, like you get used to the code base, you get used to the way that people write software there. You are able to ship the things. There are several tools to help the development process. The developer experience is actually really good there, and
Hmm.
it's something that I really value and it's really important in order for you to build things fast. Developers should have a good experience, and it's amazing the experience they provide you there. And overall, like after the ninth or 10th week, the internship is composed by 12 weeks. So in the ninth or 10th, I had most of my project done. I had basically everything done. The rest was just adjustments, and I can't believe it. I mean, I still have 2 weeks left for the internship, and it's basically done what I thought in the beginning that I wasn't be able to ship it.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. Another awesome thing there was the level of autonomy that I had when developing something, and I was really not expecting it. And it's something that actually doesn't happen everywhere that you're going to do an internship. So what one could think is that, okay, you're just an intern. There is going to be someone there that will guide you through the whole process and will tell you step by step what you should do. But actually what happens there is, okay, here is your project, go.
Oh,
And
really? So you have full autonomy over the project, and you can do it in your own way, in a way. But you
yeah,
were you
and I mean,
also given a mentor?
yeah. So the thing is, your manager goes to you and he tells you, okay, go. But it doesn't mean that he will leave you there to fail if you go wrong. It means that you have
Yeah.
the freedom to choose. Okay, what do you think? What is the way that you would like to approach your project? He's not telling you this is the right way. You have the chance of coming up with something, and then he will
Okay.
discuss with you and try to align what he wants, and and try to figure out what will be the best schedule for this project to work. And then, yeah, going back to it. So your manager goes there, tells you, okay, go ahead and do your project. But it means like this go ahead usually means you have some time to plan what you are going to do, and you actually it's a good idea. They will actually try to guide you on this direction to split your project on key milestones to be delivered. And each milestone will take roughly, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for you to ship things, so that like it won't be a surprise if you don't deliver the project, because you will fail the milestones. You will fail all the milestones as well. It won't be a surprise if you do deliver the project, because you will keep delivering the milestones consistently. And and
Okay.
like you had the flexibility of choosing what you thought was more important. So that was one thing really cool. The other thing really cool is that you have good chances of interacting with other people, either people on your team or people from other teams, and you have the chances of having then other people besides your managing reviewer manager reviewing your code. You have the chance sometimes of reviewing other codes from other people, and this is a nice opportunity to learn, because during these code reviews, it's when a really important part of the learning happens. So some things that you do, maybe they are not good practices, or they are not the best way of implementing a feature. They are not the best way of solving a task. And then in this code review, someone with a second vision will go ahead and say, hey, I think you could change this thing on this implementation. I think you could, I don't know, sometimes rename this variable to something different, or deal with this problem in a different manner. And yeah, so that's really cool. Those are really cool things about working there.
So overall, now if we compare the experiences of working at a startup and now working at Facebook in general, uh, what would be the difference in general? And okay, I wouldn't ask you which you would want to prefer working for, because that's a personal choice. And but what is the difference according to you?
Okay. For me, interesting enough, from well, besides these three jobs that I described here, I did a few other internships in other three different places. And for all of these places that I worked on, it's really impressive that the biggest company, which is Facebook, is actually the one that is able to move the fastest. And and it's really surprising that like they are an organization with more than 40, 50,000 people,
Yeah.
and you can really deliver and ship code really fast there, and it can make its way to the product really fast. That's that's one thing really impressive. Yeah. So, well, there is this speed in one side. On the other side, at Facebook, probably you won't be working on, at least on your first years or in the beginning of your time there, you won't be working on very large features that in
Yeah.
large in the sense that they will impact several customers. I mean, it might happen that you are working on a thing that impacts several customers, but there are several other things that are not impacting that many. And maybe it might be something that frustrates you. I don't know. Maybe also it could be the case that you like to work in things that impact less customers because you have less on-call pressure. So on-call work is actually the work
Yeah.
of giving support to the feature that you are developing. And if something goes wrong, you should go ahead and fix it. And sometimes during on-call work, you have to work on the weekends, you have to work overnight, and it's when you are requested. And maybe you find also cool to work on something that, okay, less people are using, so the on-call routine is more relaxed, and I can better manage my time. I can have a little bit more freedom on the time that I'm not working. I don't have to be ready to solve some emergency. So that's one thing, another way of seeing things. Also, another interesting thing about that I like to think is that I'm not really sure of what actually defines a startup because over
Okay.
overall the feeling that I have about DataBricks, so the place that I'm working now, is although they are still a startup,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel many times that they are a startup because some of the steps that they have within are okay. I mean, it's not the basic things. It's not the working way that you would expect from a startup,
Yeah.
and probably to figure out more about this, someone should go ahead and maybe making an internship there or start working there to get a better opinion. I mean that it doesn't mean that it's something bad or good. It's just okay. What are we actually defining as a startup? So on I live under my old vision of what was a startup. I wouldn't classify DataBricks as a startup. So I
Mhm.
think it's also helpful to look for practical characteristics in the company that you want to work on, and not okay, is it a startup or not? But okay, what I'm looking for. What is how many customers can I reach? What is the impact that I can have on the customers that this company has? How fast can I move with things? How important is reliability and consistency to the systems that I am providing to the company that I'm working on? How important it is that a feature is working 100% of the time? And do you like that to work in places that it's more important that the feature are working 100% of the time, or do you like more to work in places that it's okay if something is not working 100% of the time? And
Yeah.
in either case, how this company that you are looking for deals with this fact that something is not working? Do you have to solve it immediately? Do you have to so you can solve it like over the week? Do you have only to mitigate the issue and then you can maybe fix it properly at a later stage? And I think these are some of the things that you could be looking in companies rather than just okay, is this a startup or not? Because this flag, is it a startup or not, is I don't believe it's a good flag for you to figure out if you would like to work on that place. There
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
awesome startups on doing awesome things, and maybe there are boring startups that maybe also do awesome things, but you wouldn't like to work there. So
Yeah.
you should figure out how they actually work, and that could be the thing that is more instrumental for you to choose something.
So yeah, it essentially depends on the personal choice. Essentially depends on the individual and his priorities in a way. And there are a lot of things that one can consider apart from the fact that whether it's a startup or a big company. There are a lot of different things that some of which might be suitable for one kind of person and some of which might be suitable for another kind of person. So
Yeah.
that's
So
a really, yeah,
I think
nice explanation.
these were some of the things that came to mind, but also other ideas for people that are watching it eventually that they could consider when they are looking for something are also more practical things. So how fast can I get promoted? What does it mean to get promoted and have more responsibilities? Do I want to have these responsibilities faster? Do I want to have these responsibilities in a lower pace? And how flexible are they to remote work? I don't know. Maybe do after COVID-19, you figure out that okay, remote work is actually a cool thing, and I would
Yeah.
like to work more remotely. How flexible is this company about that? And okay, in the case that I'm not fully remote worker, how flexible are they to work from home policies in some of the days of the week? Maybe 1 or 2 days of the week you would like to work from your place. It would actually save you some time on something. So these are also things that you could consider when you are looking for something else.
Yeah.
And maybe another practical piece of advice that, I mean, I have no clear answer on it.
Yeah.
And it's something that when it happens, probably you have a chance of thinking about it. So imagine the case that you go ahead and you do your internship on some place and you receive an offer. And let's imagine that you received an offer in different place. And then, okay, besides work culture, that is something that you should definitely consider. Is like, where did you actually have more fun if you have had the chance of working in both places? Some things that you could also have a look on could be okay. So part of the compensation that these tech companies offer you is based on stocks. So if for anything, if I have no clear preference on which place was funnier, how do the stock packages are compared to themselves? And in the case that a company doesn't offer you stocks, but they offer you equity on the company because they are still not a capital and a company of open capital. So okay, this value that they are offering you in equity is a supposed value to what the company would be worth at some point. And are you willing
Yeah.
to take this risk of, okay, maybe the company will never be worth this value and you will never be able to use that equity that you are receiving, but maybe the multiplier on that value is higher than the stocks that you would get in a different company. And this would be something to make you consider. I don't know. I don't have the right answer. I I have no idea of what what I would do in this kind of situation, but
Yeah.
it should be definitely something to consider. And I wouldn't say that okay, choosing the bigger tech companies is the right option because it might not be. It might be that maybe a slightly smaller company which hasn't had its IPO so far might be more lucrative on that sense if that's what you're looking for. So you
Yeah.
should consider these things in mind and try to optimize. Okay, not only for the short term, but maybe okay in the midterm, in the long run, what will be more valuable? Which experience will be better? On either case, I mean, if you have the chance of choosing, if you have the chance of thinking about this problem, it's a great problem to have, and you should be very happy that you have the chance of thinking about this. But keep those things in mind when if you have the chance of choosing something.
Yeah, that's like a really detailed advice that would be really helpful for someone who is in the middle of making such a decision. So, moving on from this, from your Facebook experience and talking about the differences between working at Facebook and a startup, and moving back again to the application process of Facebook, I have another question for you regarding this. So, when you are applying for Facebook, you basically had to upload the standard documents like your motivational letter and your CV and your mark sheets and all those things. So my question to you is, how important are grades to get an internship at a company like Facebook?
Okay. So actually, I will try to be a little bit more general this. So to give more feedback, maybe I think all this applying process is important until you get an interview.
Hmm.
And I got interviews with different places as well. So I interviewed besides with Facebook, I interviewed also with Amazon, Google, Palantir, DataBricks, and a few other smaller places. And I believe the only one that asked me explicitly for my grades or at least my transcript of records was Google. And regarding the motivation letter, I believe Google has it as an optional thing. So if you want, you can submit a motivational letter there. If you don't want, you don't have to. I didn't submit one.
Okay.
And this is one thing. So Facebook doesn't have a space for motivational letters. And you also don't have to submit your transcript of records. The only thing that you submit is your resume. It's very straightforward. Well, regarding Amazon, they ask you your resume and they actually ask you a little bit more details about the projects that you have worked on.
Hmm.
But they don't ask you anything regarding your transcript of records or about or a motivation letter. So overall, if I could give any piece of advice on this regard, would be focus on working on projects, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
We have already heard several times that there are people working on these companies that they don't have university degrees. What do they have? They have projects. They worked on something. They were building something. They were coding, and this is something that people can give more value when they are evaluating you in order to invite you to an interview or not, than just the grades that you had on your university. I mean, they will check it there. They will see your transcript of records, and they see, okay, I see here 8 in math. What does that mean? I don't know. I was not there. How can I evaluate it? I have no idea of what the exam covered, and I have no grounds to compare you with your peers. However, if you have a project, and let's say that you share this project on GitHub, the interviewer actually has something that he can go ahead and see what you have done, and you can showcase your work there. And what
Yeah.
else could you want? I mean, this is the best thing that you could want. That's exactly what you want to do there. You want to work, and you have your chance to showcase your work prior to
Yeah.
getting an interview there. And it's easier to get a match from this. So if I would focus on do internships in other places. If you don't get a job in one of these places, do internships in smaller places, do internships in startups, do internships whatever you want, do research projects in your university, code something for fun. Stop, I don't know, what could I code now? There are several ideas around the internet if you don't come
Yeah.
up with any. And code, I don't know, code the small games. Code, code those things, code them properly, as good as you can. Have them on your GitHub account. If you don't have many other experiences to talk about on your resume, like professional experiences or research, academic experiences, share your GitHub projects on your resumes and focus on that. At least I would focus on that.
So essentially, what you mean to say is that the projects are the one things that are considered in the application process, and your grades are not really even looked at in most of the places. At least in probably the big four of the companies. Uh,
Yeah. So I believe overall, I mean, I believe if you don't have anything to show, if you show at least that you have good grades, that's cool. But if if you have something else to show, that's the grades are not the critical part. They will never be. And if you have like other projects to show, if you I would emphasize on work that you have actually done, because real life you'll be working on a project, you'll be working on something, and you'll be coding something. And if you have the chance of showcasing your project, your work before, that's actually closer, and it's a better signal on how good you are or not for that specific position.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you demonstrate practical skills that you might actually implement while working.
Yeah. So like if you want to choose to optimize for something, depending on your goal. So if your goal is to get an interview on, I believe in any tech company, regardless of the size, the best thing that you could optimize for is showcasing that you can actually code something. You can
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
ship a project. And I would definitely highlight that on my resume, or at least do things that highlight that I can code. For example, coding competitions would also be something that you can highlight that you can code. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So essentially, the main things that they are looking for are a practical experience that you can, actually implement when you're joining the company. So, yeah, that you can demonstrate that you are capable of working in the environment with the necessary coding skills that you have got. So, but that also, let me diverge a bit. In a different direction in this conversation. So this in a way means that the grades are at a lower value as compared to the skills, but then uh, the grades are also considered very important in for a lot of companies. They look at the grades as well, right? In a way that might also give an impression that one should focus less on grades and working more on projects, because I mean, uh, you're considering your experience, you received an offer from Facebook based on the variety of experiences that you have had and the different projects that you have had. So what do you think is the actual value of grades that the current education system provides? Just comment on the education system in general. Not to be too critical or anything about it, but generally, what are your views? What is wrong there? What can be improved? And
Yeah.
yeah.
So like the value of the grades on the education system overall, I mean, probably they showcase that someone is smart on something. I don't know if one engineer has good grades on the subjects that he did. Probably he has good knowledge of math and physics and so on. But maybe for for the professional environment, is it really the thing that we want to optimize for?